The final score, 131-128. Utah with the victory. And Golden State will win the season series 2-1, but continue to ride the roller coaster, unable to break out of the cycle. And maybe an impending trade is exactly what they needed, as they fall to 25-25, 32 games left on the season, and the Warriors are at the 500 mark.
Well said by Tim Roy. Welcome into Warriors Wrap-Up on 95.7 The Game. Mark Randy with you on this Wednesday evening. And man, do we have a lot to talk about, because there was a basketball game tonight, and it was classic 2024-25 Warriors. They build a double-digit lead. They led by 11 with 3 minutes left, and it felt like we were going to coast to a Warriors Wrap-Up where there wasn't much to talk about based on what happened on the basketball court. That's because there was a lot that went down off the basketball court today. If you have happened to not hear about it, the Warriors have reportedly acquired Jimmy Butler from the Miami Heat in exchange for Andrew Wiggins, Dennis Schröder, Kyle Anderson, Lindy Waters, and a protected first-round pick. We got plenty of time to get into that, but again, first, the Warriors blow a double-digit lead in the final 3 minutes of regulation in Utah. The Jazz without Lauri Markkanen, without Colin Sexton, yet they pick up their 12th win of the season, and the Warriors lose, falling back to 500 at 25-25. How about this? The Warriors have now been 18-18, 19-19, 20-20, so on and so forth, 21-21, 22-22, 23-23, 24-24. And now, 25-25. This is a Warrior team that cannot put any distance between themselves and 500. And as you just heard Tim Roy say, maybe a big trade is exactly what they needed, and a big trade they did make. It is not NBA official just yet. It will become official tomorrow, but the Golden State Warriors have said goodbye to Andrew Wiggins, to Dennis Schröder. We hardly knew you, Dennis. To Kyle Anderson, to Lindy Waters, and to a protected first-round pick, and they welcome in Jimmy Butler. Andrew Wiggins, the big piece going out. Jimmy Butler, the newest Golden State Warrior. In addition to that, the Warriors extend Jimmy Butler as he opts out of his $52 million player option for next season and has signed a brand new 2-year, $112 million extension to tie him through the Warriors through the 26-27 season, and that aligns him with Stephen Curry. Both Steph and Jimmy Butler now under contract with the Warriors this year and each of the next 2 seasons. Steph Curry is about to be 37. Jimmy Butler is 35. Jimmy Butler is 35. So this is an old team that got even older today with the trade for Jimmy Butler, saying goodbye to Andrew Wiggins and a few other pieces. Okay, we got so much time for your calls, for your texts, for your YouTube chats today here on Warriors Wrap-Up. Again, it's Mark Randy with you. The number to call and to text is 888-957-9570. I got my eye on the text line. I have our YouTube chat open as well. Shout out to everybody tuning in everywhere. You can visit our YouTube page, youtube.com/957thegame to join the conversation there. We can put the game on the back burner for a little bit. The Warriors wasted 32 from Stephen Curry, a career high from Brandon Pajemski. He had himself 29 points in this one. Buddy Hield scored 18 points, and the Warriors have lost for the first time this season when Buddy Hield has scored 18 or more, and they blow a big lead down the stretch. They led 122-111 with 3 minutes left. The Utah Jazz closed the game on a 20-6 run over the final 3 minutes, and they win 131-128 is the final score. But again, the news of the day for the Warriors isn't what happened on the basketball court, as frustrating as that was. It's what happened about an hour prior to tip-off. It broke at about 5:15 here on the West Coast, Pacific Standard Time, on Thursday afternoon, where the Warriors sending Andrew Wiggins, Dennis Schröder, Kyle Anderson, Lindy Waters, and a protected first-round pick out. The majority of that going to Miami, although Lindy Waters is headed to Detroit. Dennis Schröder is headed to Utah. Kyle Anderson might get rerouted from Miami, but as of right now, he is in Miami. Andrew Wiggins is in Miami. The first-round pick goes to Miami, and the Warriors get in return Jimmy Butler, 35 years old. He's averaging 17 points so far this season, but he's only played in 25 games, and he's been suspended 3 times over the last month by his team, the Miami Heat. But he is now a Warrior, and he is going to sign a 2-year contract extension with the Warriors to tie him into Golden State through the 26-27 season, which again aligns him perfectly with Stephen Curry, who's under contract for 2 more years beyond this one. The protection on the pick, it's a top 10 protected this year. Same thing for next year. Unprotected in 2027 if it gets that far. And to break that down so you know exactly what that means, if the Warriors, say, miss the playoffs and their first-round pick this year turns out to be in the top 10 based on the lottery and how those ping-pong balls are selected, the Warriors will keep their pick and they will make a pick in the top 10. But if for whatever reason either they make the playoffs or their lottery pick falls outside of the top 10, that pick goes to the Miami Heat. It's the same exact scenario next year. If it's a top 10 pick for the Warriors, and again, this is before I even get to next year, if the pick does not convey, say the Warriors have a top 10 pick this year, they would make that pick, then Miami gains the rights to next year's first-round pick. Again, top 10 protected. So the same exact scenario for next year. If the Warriors again pick in the top 10, that means the 2027 pick, no matter what, is going to Miami with no protections. So the Warriors are betting that at least once of the next 2 years, they will not be picking in the top 10 so that they don't have to give out an unprotected first in 2027 when Steph is older, when Jimmy Butler is older, when Draymond Green is older, and so on and so forth. I think it's a pretty safe bet. I would imagine the Warriors won't be picking in the top 10 in each of the next 2 drafts, which means one of these next 2 picks will very likely be going to Miami, and the Warriors will have their 2027 pick, and they will not have to worry about that being a really valuable pick that goes to Miami. So that's the protection explained there of that first-round pick for the Warriors. But we still got to sort through what the Warriors gave up, aside from the pick, to get Jimmy Butler in here. So Jimmy Butler is the return for the Warriors. They give up the pick, as we talked about. Andrew Wiggins, who's having himself an awesome season. Dennis Schröder, who was acquired in December from the Brooklyn Nets and just became eligible to trade today, by the way. Kyle Anderson, who first-year Warrior, signed as a free agent this past offseason. And then Lindy Waters, who the Warriors acquired on a draft day trade with Oklahoma City. The pick that eventually became Quentin Post was sent to Oklahoma City, and then the Warriors turned around and bought that pick right back. So Lindy Waters, we are hardly knew you as well. He's on his way out, and the Warriors get back Jimmy Butler. My first instincts on this trade, and you can let me know how you feel one way or the other, 888-957-9570. That's the number to call. It's also the Comcast Business text line. It's Mark Randy with you here on Warriors Wrap-Up. So much to get into. Would love to hear from you. We've got time all night to get into your thoughts on Jimmy Butler. My first thought when hearing about this deal, again, Butler to the Warriors, Wiggins, Schröder, Anderson, Lindy Waters, and a first-round pick, top 10 protected, headed out, not all of it to Miami, but the majority to Miami. It felt like a lot because the reporting earlier this week, I specifically remember Brian Windhorst of ESPN, who's been very plugged in this entire process, on Sunday evening saying that Jimmy Butler has voiced that he would not be signing an extension with the Warriors, and the Warriors therefore had pulled themselves out of the running for Jimmy Butler. Well, what changed? What changed was the Warriors then later failed to get Kevin Durant when 24 hours ago it felt like they were going to get Kevin Durant. That didn't happen because Durant apparently today made known that he did not want to become a Golden State Warrior once again. And frankly, I can't really blame him. Who knows exactly why he doesn't want to be a Warrior again. But again, frankly, I can't quite blame him. So the Warriors struck out their delay while waiting for Dennis Schröder to become tradable and hoping that Kevin Durant would work out, cost them a chance at Zach LaVine. there were a couple of other chances and potential moves to be made out there, but Jimmy Butler may be the best individual player left once you struck out on Kevin Durant. So the Warriors at that point probably got a little bit more desperate. And what made this move happen from the Warriors' perspective was probably their willingness to give Jimmy Butler more money than they were probably previously willing to do. Because I think the reporting from Brian Windhorst, again, I referenced what he reported on Sunday, where he said that Jimmy Butler told the Warriors he would not be signing an extension, was probably because the preliminary talks the two sides had, Jimmy Butler was looking for more money. And the Warriors, after missing on Kevin Durant, probably said, all right, you know what, Jimmy? We'll give you 2 years, $112 million. That is $56 million per year. And then Jimmy said, okay, I'll sign that. I'm happy with that. There also might be the reality that Jimmy Butler was not going to be able to find his way to get to Phoenix, which is his preferred destination per reports. Another failed 24 hours of those conversations might have swayed Jimmy Butler as well. But I would imagine the Warriors got a little bit desperate, became a little bit more willing to pay him more money and a contract extension. He said yes to that, and the Warriors said, okay, now we feel comfortable giving up Wiggins, other salary filler, and a protected first-round pick in order to get this guy in here, because now we know we're going to have him more than just the next 3 months. Jimmy Butler will be a Warrior beyond this season. Who the hell knows if he'll finish his contract as a Warrior, but he is currently, not officially, but essentially he's under contract for the next 2.5 years. Again, I would imagine this all becomes official sometime tomorrow, and we'll let you know when it is official. The Warriors will announce via press release when it does become official. It's not just yet, but this is a done deal. This is happening. Jimmy Butler is a Warrior, and he's under contract now for the Warriors for the next 2.5 seasons. All right, you can join the conversation here on Warriors Wrap Up, 888-957-9570. Let's see. The 510 asking, does this make it Jimmy Butler's team? I can't see him taking second fiddle to anyone, even Curry. It feels similar to KD coming over, but a lighter version. Well, there's no doubt that Jimmy Butler is a dog, and he's an alpha male. And everywhere he goes, he seems to demand the most out of his teammates, to a degree where he generally overstays his welcomes in those places. Remember the story when he was in Minnesota, and he was not in Minnesota long, but he got so frustrated with a group of players there, and kind of oddly enough, there's some irony here. One of them was Andrew Wiggins. Another one of them was Karl Anthony Towns, and he said, all right, you know what? Basically calling those two soft, I'm going to take a group full of bench players that rarely see the court, and everyone else can be on your team in practice, and I will beat you. And Jimmy Butler did. He wore out his welcome there. He did the same before that in Chicago. We know what happened in Philadelphia. He and Joel Embiid seemed to butt heads, although Embiid earlier in this whole process, while the Jimmy Butler drama was unfolding, reportedly was interested in a reunion with Jimmy Butler. That, of course, did not happen, and now we know what has happened in Miami. He didn't get the contract extension offer from Miami he was hoping for, so he began to make life difficult on Pat Riley and the Heat and everyone else down there in South Beach. The Heat and Pat Riley, as he tends to do, has responded in kind, suspending him 3 separate times, and now he gets his wish. He leaves Miami. He's now a Golden State Warrior, and he gets a fresh 2-year, $112 million contract extension. So there's no doubt to the 510 that this is going to be an interesting fit. And honestly, I'm a little less worried about the locker room, the chemistry, the dynamics there between relationships. Honestly, I think that's a little bit overblown. I think the Warriors are a serious enough organization that Jimmy Butler will come in and will respect that this is a team that's trying to make the most of the final few years of Steph Curry's career. I think Draymond Green, for as much as we talk about him and some of his off-the-court issues, that is, just also similar to Jimmy Butler, this on-the-court, incredibly aggressive and competitive athlete. I think Jimmy Butler is very similar in that regard. I have less of a concern about that. But if you're asking me, about how I think Jimmy Butler will fit on the basketball court, I mean, he's not a great shooter, and the Warriors desperately need more than anything else shooting. And they did not get, in fact, they probably got worse as a shooting team with this deal. Andrew Wiggins was having himself a really nice season. Andrew Wiggins this year from deep, about 38% from downtown. Jimmy Butler, who's having a really good year shooting the basketball in only 25 games, shooting 36%. By comparison, Jimmy Butler's a 33% career three-point shooter. Andrew Wiggins in his career over 35%, but ever since becoming a Warrior, he's been a whole lot better than that. So I don't know exactly how this fits on the basketball court, but what I will say is in addition to needing shooting, the Warriors in general just needed some scoring and a legitimate number 2 option behind Steph Curry, and Jimmy Butler gives the Warriors that. There is absolutely no doubt about that. Jimmy Butler can go out there and get you 20 points a night. He can do it by getting to the rim. He can do it by posting up. He can do it in the mid-range. He can do it off the dribble. You don't need to go and create points for Jimmy Butler. He can create points himself. I think he's also a severely underrated distributor and passer, and he will demand the attention of the opposing defense, and that will free stuff up for Stephen Curry. I think the dream addition for this Warriors team was someone who can score off the dribble, who can get to the paint and score, who can set up teammates, but who's also an elite three-point shooter. If you just could snap your fingers and make Jimmy Butler an elite three-point shooter, I mean, I know that's a big ask. He would become the Warriors' dream acquisition because he does everything else well. He is still a very quality defender. He and Draymond Green make quite the duo on the defensive side of the court. The Warriors' defense got better. Their offense got better. And I know that Andrew Wiggins was having himself an awesome season. I'm not denying that. But Jimmy Butler is a hell of a basketball player. I'll put it this way. And I think there's a lot of Warrior fans who don't feel the same way that I do, and that's entirely fine. This is a forum for all you Warrior fans. You can get in and get your takes off. Let me know how you feel about Jimmy. We're going to pay our respects to Andrew Wiggins. He deserves it as well. There's so much to get into. Again, feel free to join the conversation, 888-957-9570. That's the number to call. It's also our text line. I've also got my eye on our YouTube chat. Again, powered by First NorCal Credit Union, 95.7 The Game, or pardon me, youtube.com/957 The Game. The chat's coming in fast and furious, so sorry if I can't keep up with all of them right now. We will get to you eventually. Stay patient. I'll put it this way, though, about Jimmy Butler, and then we're going to take a quick break. We'll come back and get to a whole lot more. A Jimmy Butler that is fully locked in, a Jimmy Butler that is dedicated to the team, a Jimmy Butler that is trying his best to help his team win basketball games, and a Jimmy Butler that is healthy, still has elite two-way availability, elite two-way versatility, elite two-way value, okay? Those are a couple of big ifs, though. The operative words there are that Jimmy is healthy and that Jimmy is locked in on winning. Because there have been times when Jimmy is, number one, not healthy, and number two, when probably cares a little bit more about other things than trying to help his team win basketball games. And the last month is exactly what you need to know as far as that goes. He has been interested in getting out of Miami for the last month, and that has taken precedence over playing basketball. Jimmy Butler has not played a lot of games of late. Only 3 games over the last month and 5 games since December 21st. That has not been a locked-in Jimmy. But if you get a locked-in and healthy Jimmy, he immediately becomes the Warriors' second-best player, and there will be nights where he's the Warriors' best player. Jimmy Butler is still an incredible basketball player. He makes this team better, and oh, by the way, when it comes down to winning time, when it comes down to crunch time, and hell, when it comes down to postseason time, there are few better basketball players in the world than Jimmy Butler. You just got to get there. You just got to get there. Okay, time for a quick break. We're just getting started. We got so much more to get to. I see your texts. I see your YouTube chats coming in. We will address all of those. We're just getting going here on Warriors Wrap Up. You can join the conversation, 957-9570. It's Mark Randy with you on Warriors Wrap Up. The Dubs lose. They blow an 11-point lead in the final 3 minutes, but they got Jimmy Butler on the way to the Bay. We'll talk more about that when we come back. It's Warriors Wrap Up with Mark Randy here on 95.7 The Game.
Butler has done it again.
Now back to Warriors Wrap Up on 95.7 The Game.
Welcome back. That was a Jimmy Butler incredible playoff game from back in the 2023 Eastern Conference Playoffs first round. You heard Kevin Harlan, Reggie Miller on TNT. He had a 50-point showing in Game 3 of that one. Playoff Jimmy is real. And I think the Warriors are just hoping they get to experience it because that means they got to the playoffs. The Warriors right now are not in the playoffs. That's why they made this trade, because they're trying to get to the playoffs. And if you did, guess what? You just got one of the best playoff performers, not just currently, but in NBA history. And I am not being facetious there. Jimmy Butler, in his playoff career, averaging over 21 points per game, 6.5 rebounds per game, 4.5 assists per game. He's shooting from the field 46%. This is a guy who is at his best in the postseason, and specifically the 2021-22 playoffs. Jimmy Butler was out of his mind, averaging 27.5 points per game in that playoff series, 7.5 or in that playoff season, a group of series where he willed an 8 seed, the 23, he willed the 8 seed all the way to the NBA Finals, but he has had a number of incredible postseason runs. Playoff Jimmy is real. And you get him alongside Stephen Curry and Draymond Green and a healthy Jonathan Kuminga and a few others in a playoff series. And you have a puncher's shot to beat anybody in the Western Conference. The issue is the Warriors have to get there, and they have to hope that their veteran core stays healthy. And those are a couple of big ifs. And I was just running through, I think, some of the reasons why the Warriors did this trade. Because, again, if you get a Jimmy that is focused on winning, and, who knows what 2 years from now holds. But as of right now, I can't think of a realistic reason why Jimmy Butler would not be locked in on winning. He just signed a 2-year extension to serve the next 2.5 years, maybe the final 2.5 years of his career as a Warrior. He got the contract. He signed the contract. The only reasons he's upset in Miami is because they didn't give him the contract extension that he wanted. He has the contract extension that he wants. So what reason is there for him to continue to cause a stink like he currently is doing in Miami in Golden State? Okay? So if you get that locked in, Jimmy, I think you have plenty of reason to believe that you will. But it's a big if. If you get that playoff Jimmy, and if Jimmy is healthy. That's also a big if because he's 35. But if those two things happen, the Warriors are a much better basketball team. And that is nothing against Andrew Wiggins. Wiggins was having an amazing season for his standards. But I can run through, and in fact, I'm going to do this in a second because I have the numbers. I'll read them off to you. And I think this might open some of your eyes. I'll give that to you in a second. The numbers between Wiggins and Butler and why I think it's pretty clear how much of a better player Jimmy Butler is, even at this stage of his career. But before we do that, we're going to go out to the phone lines. But to the 925, you are right. My list of ifs seems pretty insurmountable. It's a risk the Warriors are willing to take. And it's a gamble. There's no doubt it's a gamble. But I don't know what other choice the Warriors had. Because Kevin Durant didn't want to come here. You missed out on Zach LaVine because a deal got done involving LaVine before you had the contract of Dennis Schröder to help make the deal work. You were missing out on your targets left and right for whatever reason. So you had to take a swing and make something happen. And guess what? You got to keep Jonathan Kuminga, and you only gave up one first-round pick, and very, very, very unlikely that it would be an extremely valuable first-round pick. There were already reports that if the Warriors were to pick in the teens this NBA draft, that they weren't too enamored by those prospects. So the Warriors give up what they hope is going to be not even a lottery pick, going to be a pick that falls like maybe 16th or 17th or 18th, or maybe if they have a postseason run in them 20th. I think they can live with that because it means 2.5 years of Jimmy Butler. Okay, out to the phone lines we go. 888-957-9570. Steel Toe is standing by in San Mateo. What's up, Steel Toe? You're on Warriors Wrap Up. Mark Randy with you. How you doing? What do you think about this trade, Steel Toe?
Thank you, Grandy. I'm shocked and excited. I didn't think they could get a deal as good as that. That was super impressive by Lacob and Dunleavy, and I'm pretty excited. I don't know what's going to happen, but I'm excited by the energy and the deal of everything, and they're taking this season serious, and I could be positive about this season no matter what happens. Thank you.
Yeah, appreciate the call, Steel Toe. I think Steel Toe hits on something important, and there can be a lot said about whether you think this makes the Warriors a contender. Look, I think it makes them better, but I think you'd be foolish to think that they're now suddenly a Western Conference favorite, because even if they do play great basketball the rest of the season, they're probably going to be like a bottom 6 seed in the Western Conference. If things go great, you could maybe sneak into the 5, but you're definitely not going to be a top 4 seed, and being the 5 would be if things go perfect for you the rest of the year. And if the Warriors' last 2.5 years are any, indicator of what the rest of this season might hold, it doesn't seem like things are going to go perfect. Things tend to go wrong for this team, especially of late, and tonight is a perfect example because they had an 11-point lead with 3 minutes left, and they found a way to lose this game in regulation. Like, things will go wrong. But even if this team doesn't win 2 series in the playoffs and legitimately make a threat in the Western Conference, at least the Warriors are a hell of a lot more interesting now, and they're more exciting, and there's more reason to tune in and to figure out what this team is going to look like. The Warriors were a really bad combination leading up to the trade deadline. They not only were an average basketball team, but they were a boring basketball team. Now this is a Warrior team that currently still, again, they're 525-25, but they very well could be, a team that goes 20-12 over their final 32 games, and they're exciting in the process. This is a move that at the very least makes the Warriors a little easier to watch and a little more exciting to kind of sort through who they are. And the Warriors needed that because they were in danger of, again, not just being average and being a team that maybe sneaks into a play-in spot, but being a pretty darn boring basketball team in the process. And whenever you have Steph and Curry on your roster, it is difficult to be boring, yet the Warriors had found a way. They're not boring anymore. How is Draymond and Jimmy Butler going to get along? How is Steph Curry going to work off of Jimmy Butler? This is going to be really, really cool to see how the Warriors make this work on the offensive end, because they now legitimately have a bona fide number 2 scoring option, not one that they've had in quite a while alongside Steph Curry. 888-957-9570. I'll give you those Jimmy and Wiggins stats in a second, but let's go back out to the phone lines because Chardol is standing by. Chardol, what's up? You're on Warriors Wrap Up on 95.7 The Game. How you doing?
It's great calling in Warriors Wrap Up. Top loss for the Warriors. Pajelski and Curry come back for 61 points, but they still end up getting the loss, 131-120 against the Utah Jazz. I think this was a great effort. I think the Warriors fought really hard. The result wasn't what you expected, but I think this team is great. I think then end up they put a great fight. Whichever team they play against, they play their hardest. They bring their A game every night. I think this was a good effort, but I think we're gonna bounce back against the next team we face. I mean, I'm a big Warriors fan. I was really expecting to see Potts and Curry go out today and get the Warriors a win, but that was not the result that came out today. But it's great calling in the Warriors Wrap Up, and I really love calling into the show. I really love showing all my love and support for the network. Yeah,
appreciate it, Chardol, and thanks for tuning in. I gotta say though, based on what happened tonight, I disagree with you there. I love your optimism as always, Chardol, but this was a Warrior team, and I know they were down a lot of bodies, right? You didn't have a couple of guys because of injury. You're down Kuminga, you're down Moody, you're also down Trace Jackson-Davis, who was a late scratch, although he hasn't played a lot lately. Wiggins, of course, unavailable because he just got traded. Same with Schröder and Anderson and Lindy Waters. Guy Santos left the game with left patella tendonitis. Does not seem to be serious, but you did not have him in the second half. And, of course, Jimmy Butler just acquired, not available for this game either. So you were down a lot of guys, but Utah was also without Lauri Markkanen, by far their best player. Colin Sexton, I think pretty clearly their second best player, at least on offense. And they found a way to erase an 11-point deficit in the final 3 minutes, and they win this basketball game. So, again, Chardol, appreciate your enthusiasm, your optimism, but this was one of the Warriors' worst losses of the season, and it's a really long list of bad losses that are stacking up for the Warriors right now. Okay, let me read you off, read some numbers to you, and then we're going to go out to Gary, who's standing by in San Ramon, That's coming up in a second. So we can all agree, right, that this is Jimmy Butler's worst season in quite a long time. Jimmy Butler is less interested in trying to play basketball right now. At least he had been over the last month plus, because he did not get a contract extension from the Miami Heat, so he made Miami's life a living hell. In turn, Miami made Jimmy's life a living hell. He's only played in 25 basketball games. And the basketball games that Jimmy has played in, I think it's fair to say he hasn't, been terribly locked in and been trying to play his best basketball during that stretch, right? Okay, so with that in mind, let's go through some of his numbers. Jimmy Butler this year, again, with all of that in mind, only 25 games played, and has seemingly been more interested in trying to make Miami's life as worse as it possibly can. He's averaging 17 points per game, 5 rebounds per game, 5 assists per game. He's shooting 54% from the field and 36% from downtown. That is like career worst Jimmy Butler. Never been worse than that. Never in his entire career. And those are his numbers. All right, what about Andrew Wiggins this year? A year that we consider bounce back. He's having a hell of a season. He's been the number 2 behind Steph and Curry. He's been more consistent than he has been in the past. He has won the Warriors some games by himself. What are his numbers? 17.6 points per game, 4.6 rebounds per game, 2.3 assists per game. He's shooting 44% from the field and 38% from downtown. That's good Andrew Wiggins. Jimmy Butler has him beat in almost every single category. And again, that's career worst Jimmy Butler and like bounce back season Andrew Wiggins. Wiggins has him beat by 0.6 of a point per game. Jimmy Butler has him beat on rebounds, has him beat on assists, has him beat by a wide margin on field goal percentage. Jimmy Butler, 54% from the field. Andrew Wiggins, 44% from the field. And oh, by the way, Jimmy Butler, not a great shooter, only 2 percentage points worse than Andrew Wiggins from downtown. Like, I don't feel like I have to sell how good, I don't think I should have to sell how good Jimmy Butler is. But if you want to tell me Wiggins is having a great season, I am right there with you. And seeing Wiggins walk out the door is difficult. He was the second most important player on a team that won a championship just 3 years ago in 2022. As far as I'm concerned, he's a Warrior for life. An amazing Warrior. The Warriors do not win that championship without him. But we can look at the numbers and we can just agree, because it's statistic fact, that Andrew Wiggins' bounce back hell of a season is worse than Jimmy Butler's career worst year. A year when Jimmy is not even interested in playing basketball to this point. And that's not even mentioning the defensive end. And I know Wiggins is a positive defensively, but he's not Jimmy Butler defensively. He is not Jimmy Butler defensively. And let me tell you something else. I think a big reason why you might be opposed to the trade, and if you are, give me a call, shoot me a text. I want to hear from you. Jimmy Butler is 35. He'll be 36 in September, I believe. I have it here for you. Yeah, he'll be 36 in September. Andrew Wiggins isn't even 30 yet. The Warriors just got so much older. Why aren't they planning for the future? Well, if Andrew Wiggins is like the only thing you got going for you in the future, I hate to break it to you, you're going to be pretty darn bad. Wiggins is a nice piece, but he's not anything worth keeping around for 4 years down the road. Wiggins could help you win some games now, yeah, no doubt. But if you are so concerned about the future, this trade shouldn't really worry you that much. They gave up a protected first-round pick, Andrew Wiggins, and a bunch of filler. The odds are none of that is going to help you win 4 or 5 years from now. I hate to break it to you. A first-round pick is a shot in the dark. And the Warriors, that pick that goes to Miami, probably going to be somewhere around the 15 or 16 range. Is that going to be the savior for them? Hell no. So I don't know exactly what the Warriors gave up that makes this so incredibly difficult to swallow. I would have felt you if this was only 3 months of Jimmy Butler. But we're talking about 2.5 years of Jimmy Butler. And there's a lot that can happen over 2.5 years. A lot of ways that Jimmy Butler can help you in that stretch. All right, 888-957-9570 is the number. You can give me a call, shoot me a text. Let's go back out to the phone lines because Mark in Petaluma, sorry, Mark, I got you coming up next. I mentioned Gary first. So we're going to go to Gary first. Mark, we'll come to you next. Gary is standing by in San Ramon. Gary, what's up? You're on a Warriors wrap-up on 95.7 The Game. How you doing?
Hey, Grandy, you almost got me sold on Butler, but the bottom line for me is how many rings does Jimmy Butler have?
He's got 0.
Okay, there you go.
That's all that matters to you?
Your own question mark. No, I'm not impressed. Okay, the guy's another malcontent. He's not a total team player. He's proven that at several stops, like you just reiterated. Wiggins is beloved on that team. He's got us a ring. He was the second best player 2 years ago. Where was Jimmy Butler last year? Where was all the magic last year? This guy plays maybe sometimes, not only on his terms. And it's just another malcontent to go along with bad behavior. And what can we expect from that as well as what can we expect from Draymond? The other problem is these guys are getting older. Look at Steph this year. He's having one of his worst years ever. Like tonight was what, 12 for 31, 6 for 18 from 3? That's ridiculous. Draymond, he's been hurt. How many games has he missed the last couple of years? So you want to turn back the clock, Mark? It's not going to happen.
Yeah, I mean, Gary, I hear you. I mean, this team is not getting younger, but I don't know what the other option is. Did you want to trade away Steph? Is that what you were doing? I don't think so. And if you're not going to trade away Steph, it's pretty difficult for you to kind of reset while he's on the roster because he's not interested in just hanging out on a 20-win team like Kobe did at the end of Kobe's career. You want this to be that? Like, you might be setting yourself up for some lean years after Steph retires, but I'll break a little bit of more news to you. It was going to be that way regardless, whether you had Wiggins or not, whether you had your first-round pick this coming year, next year, or not. It's going to be bad when Steph retires no matter what. So in my mind, as long as you're not giving away literally every future asset you have, what are you really losing here? And Gary, I love you. Appreciate the call. You're welcome here on Warriors Wrap-Up anytime. And thank you so much for listening. The rings argument is you're overlooking so much. So much. You're going to tell me Robert Horry is one of the best basketball players of all time because he won a lot of rings? No, of course not. So you cannot use the Jimmy Butler no rings argument with a straight face. Jimmy Butler took a bunch of scrubs to the finals twice. More so just once. The bubble trip was amazing as well. That one seems a little more understandable. He took an 8 seed all the way to the NBA Finals. And it was legitimately him against the world. There were moments when Bam Adebayo had some good play, some others that chipped in, right? They had a bunch of like those G League converts that turned into solid players. Jimmy Butler willed a team full of Bam Adebayo and nobodies all the way to the NBA Finals. They beat, the year after the Warriors beat the Celtics in the NBA Finals, he single-handedly beat that Celtics team. The Celtics team that the following year, which was last year, won the NBA Finals running away with it. He beat that team to go to the Finals. This is a playoff performer who has elevated a team and a roster and talent like few others have. Like, I'd argue that Jimmy Butler postseason run now 2 seasons ago, the 2023 postseason, like as impressive as almost any other playoff run I've seen over the last decade. Individual playoff run from an individual player perspective. He was absolutely otherworldly. Every clutch bucket you could possibly dream of. And he's putting up 40-point games. He's putting up 50-point games. He's putting up 30-point games like it's no big deal. Let me just read you some of these performances that he had in that 2023 postseason. He had a 35.5 rebound, 11 assist game to beat Milwaukee, the 1 seed in game 1 of that series. Later on in that series, 56 points and 9 rebounds. The very next game, clinched the win in that series over Milwaukee, the 1 seed, 42 points, 8 rebounds, 4 assists. What about in the next round? He had a 25, 11, and 4, 28 points, 27, 6, and 10, 24, 8, and 4. In the Eastern Conference Finals against Boston, 35, and 7, and 5, and 6 steals, by the way. He had 29, 9, and 5. He was absolutely incredible in those playoffs. And I know everyone's going to say, well, you're going back 2 years, Grandy. What was last year? Yeah, he helped the team to the playoffs. He did not play in the playoffs last year because he was unavailable with an injury. And I said it off the top, and I'll say it to you again. And I see it right now. Robert on our YouTube chat, powered by First NorCal Credit Union. You can join the conversation, youtube.com/957thegame. These are a couple of big ifs with Jimmy Butler, and I understand it. If you get a fully engaged Jimmy Butler, and if you get a healthy Jimmy Butler, he is still a legitimate, great two-way threat. Legitimately, a great two-way threat. And the Warriors have not had a two-way threat of that level in quite some time. If that gamble pays off, again, a couple of big ifs, a locked-in Jimmy and a healthy Jimmy. If that pays off, you're getting one hell of a player. Golden State is. Those ifs, that gamble has to pay off. But if it does, you're getting one hell of a basketball player. And I don't know how you can possibly feel like the Wiggins Jimmy Butler comparison is fair. Wiggins a hell of a Warrior, and I will always remember him for what he did in 2022, and he was having himself a really, really good season. He's not Jimmy Butler. He is not Jimmy Butler. Wiggins is good. Jimmy Butler has been great. And I think Jimmy Butler has more greatness in him, but we shall see. Okay, 888-957-9570. Now let's head out to Mark in Petaluma. Mark, appreciate your patience. How you doing? You're on Warriors Wrap-Up on 95.7 The Game.
Hey, thanks a lot. I'm hearing this echo in the background. I'm talking off my smartphone, and I don't know if it's something your engineer can do, but it's kind of messing me up a little bit.
Just power through it, Mark. Just power through it.
Okay,
we're hearing you fine, but just keep going.
Happening to you. Okay, anyway. I wanted to ask, before the game on your station, they were talking about the fact that, are you still there?
Sorry, what was that?
There?
Sorry, yeah, go ahead.
Okay, because I'm hearing a commercial really loud at the same time I'm talking to you. Anyway, I'm going to power through it. Yeah, so do you think the the Warriors might have a follow-up trade and still maybe get Vukovic too?
Interesting question, Mark. It's possible. Now, the Warriors do have to do, and I appreciate you tuning in, and sorry you were hearing that weird stuff. Probably something on your phone. Maybe you clicked something accidentally, but the Warriors do have still some contracts and players they could trade out. They kept hold of both Looney and Gary Payton II, who are a couple of players on expiring deals, which is very valuable this time of the year. So the Warriors could do something like that. However, I will also let you know that right now the Warriors are operating from a position where they need to add players, not just swap players, and definitely not trade 2 players for 1 player or 3 players for 1 player. They are at a roster deficiency spot right now. They have 11 players under contract. They are obligated per NBA rules, per contract rules, per the CBA, to sign a 12th player by tomorrow. I would imagine that would be probably Quentin Post, who's going to get elevated, converted from a two-way deal to a full-time contract. He would become the Warriors' 12th contract, guaranteed contract. They would then need to get 2 more fully guaranteed contracts by February 20th. So you have essentially 2 weeks to get back up to the mandatory 14. They're at 11 right now with Jimmy Butler, and then by sending Wiggins and Schröder and Anderson and Lindy Waters out. So you're down to 11 right now. You got to get back up to 12 tomorrow. I would imagine it would be converting Quentin Post, and then you're going to need to still sign 2 more. That could very well be, converting Pat Spencer as well. Maybe you convert Jackson Rowe in addition to that, and then you get back up to 14. Or maybe there's another minor move made in trades. You could also figure things out in the buyout market. And if the Warriors have enough space, they currently have a little bit of space under the first apron, which they cannot exceed. You've got $1.4 million in space. You could operate on the buyout market as well, which maybe is a way for the Warriors to get another player in here. So, Mark, to answer your question, they still could, but it makes getting back up to the mandatory minimum of 14 players over the next 2 weeks more difficult. Not out of the question, but it does make it a little bit more difficult for the Warriors to get something like that done. Okay, we're going to go to the phones again here in a sec, but first, I want to remind you, you're listening to 95.7 The Game, KGMZ FM and HD1 San Francisco, and Odyssey Sports Station, always live on the free Odyssey app, Twitch, and YouTube, powered by First NorCal Credit Union. For a low-rate auto loan, apply online or just ask for First NorCal financing at the dealer. Filmo Mike is in San Francisco, as always, and he wants to join this conversation. What's up, Filmo? You're on Warriors Wrap-Up. How you doing?
What's good?
Not much, Filmo. What about you?
I could be better. We lost to the Jazz. That sucks. But I just want to take a note of the talent acquisition on the West versus the East. The West is getting a lot of. They just took Jimmy Butler, Zach LaVine, also from the East. Just FYI, and then also, I really don't feel like this trade made us better for now or in the future. We'll see what it do. I'm really not too thrilled about the trade. I understand your enthusiasm, but my thing is, I think that we should have just stayed pat because we're not. He's older. He's like what 6 years older than Andrew Wiggins.
Yep.
So I don't think that's a good fit for the future. But I mean, if they feel like, for the next 2 years, Jimmy Butler could be that person, hopefully he can. But Wiggins was solid. Schröder was coming along, and Kyle Anderson was. You know what you was going to get from him. So I'm a longtime Warrior fan, and I just feel like it wasn't a good move for the future. But we'll see what it do this year. I'm a Warrior fan for life.
Let me ask you, Filmo, what do you think if you didn't like this move for the future, what do you think they should have done at the deadline?
I think they should have did nothing. I think they should have stood pat because I don't feel like any player out there, Jimmy Butler included, was going to push us over the top to that point where we're going to get to the point where it's like, okay, we got, my thing is this, is Andrew Wiggins is Jimmy Butler worth 2 times the salary of Andrew Wiggins? And I would say no.
Yeah, that's fair. What's your major holdup? Saying bye to Wiggins or the first round pick?
The first round pick is big as well. Do we get Alec Burke or no?
No, just Jimmy Butler.
Okay. So yeah, the first round pick is kind of big, but it's like his age, man. I'm like, you look at every team that's thriving, they're young, and now we saddled with Jimmy Butler for another year and a half, 2 years. I don't think that's a good move. That's just me.
Yeah, I hear you, Filmo. Appreciate the call as always.
Yes,
appreciate you tuning in on the Warriors Wrap Up. One of our more loyal listeners. Always love hearing from Filmo. I get it, but I just have a hard time figuring out what the alternative was. Because if we're so fed up by the Warriors' age, and I know no one wants to trade Steph Curry, the Warriors are always going to be a veteran-led team. And, like, again, after Steph, like, you make this trade or you don't make this trade, you're going to be in trouble. So you might as well try it to give it your best over the next 2.5 years while you still have Steph and hope you can figure things out. But whether you have Wiggins under contract after Steph is done or not, like you're still not going to be a great basketball team. And oh, by the way, the Wiggins contract and the Jimmy Butler contract, they go the same length. And there is a player option involved for Wiggins, so there's a chance he opts out and he hits the open market before Jimmy Butler's time with the Warriors is up. And I know you probably expect 2 years from now Wiggins to be outperforming Jimmy Butler, and that's possible considering their age. And the Warriors are going to have like nearly $120 million tied up between two 37 and 38-year-olds 2 years from now. I get that. It's not a great look, and it's going to be difficult for that Warrior team to be incredibly competitive. But unless you had a dream scenario where, say, you could acquire Zion Williamson and you had a guarantee that he was going to be healthy for the rest of his career, I don't really know what you have out there that makes you really competitive in Steph's career and after Steph's career. I think the main reason why I am okay with this trade, it honestly has less to do with me feeling like Jimmy Butler makes this Warrior team this second uber competitive, and more to do with the fact that I don't really know exactly what the Warriors gave up for the future. Like, tangibly tell me what they gave up for the future. Yeah, you can say, well, it's the first round pick. Well, odds are the pick is going to be in the teens, and yeah, there's a chance it could turn out, but there's also a damn good chance it's a nobody. The last time the Warriors had a pick in the teens, they picked who? Moses Moody? Is Moses Moody the reason why you're incredibly optimistic about the future? And Moody's been playing great of late, but let's not pretend like you often get a cornerstone type player from a pick like that. And it's also not pretend that Andrew Wiggins is the difference between you winning 40 games and winning 20 games. If Wiggins is one of your best players, like, I hate to break it to you, you're probably going to be a pretty bad basketball team. You don't have Steph, and you still, like, and again, this isn't against Wiggins, but I think it's the reality of what the Warriors' situation is. Like, if you were giving up 2 first-round picks or 3 first-round picks, and it was like years down the road after Steph is done, a very real possibility that was going to be like a top 10 draft pick, okay, I'm concerned about that. This draft pick is not going to be a top 10 that goes to Miami. Unless you get really, 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 really unlucky. And the only way that happens is by you having 2 top 10 picks the next 2 years. Like, the only way Miami gets an uber valuable pick out of you is if you suck this year, you suck next year, and then you suck again the following year. They would get that following year's pick. You would have this year's pick and next year's pick if things go terribly wrong for the Warriors. I don't know what you can tangibly tell me that they gave up that so changes your view of the future. They were always going to be a veteran-laden team, and yeah, they leaned into that. Is it hard to think that Steph and Dre and Jimmy Butler are going to be healthy for 82 games at any point moving forward? No, of course not. But that's also today's NBA. Lauri Markkanen, who all of us, most of us, wanted the Warriors to acquire this past offseason, didn't play tonight. Didn't play last week when the Warriors played Utah again at Chase Center. Like, that's just what happens in today's NBA. And the Warriors are leading into it. Would you rather Steph be 29 and Dre 27 and Butler 28? Yeah, of course. The Warriors don't have the ability to turn back time. And they tried to get Kevin Durant. He's also pretty old too. Like, they just didn't have that home run option. And the Warriors, I give them credit. They're doing their best. They are doing their best to try to support Stephen Curry right now. And I think they deserve a little bit of credit for that. Did they get desperate? Yeah, hell yeah, I think they got desperate. What changed? Probably their willingness to give Jimmy Butler a pretty darn big contract extension. Because remember, the report on Sunday was Jimmy Butler did not want to sign to stay with the Warriors. And then the Warriors maybe upped the offer, and he said, okay, I'll sign with you now. I'll be there for the next 2.5 years. Done deal. Let's get this done. And now he's a Warrior. The Warriors probably got desperate, no doubt. But they had every reason to be desperate. What else? This is a 500 basketball team led by 2 Hall of Famers. You're not going to just tank and give up on the final couple of years of Steph's career. I don't know what other option this Warrior team had. 888-957-9570. We're going to hear from Steve Kerr coming up in a little bit, but let's go back out to the phone lines right now. Again, 888-957-9570. Jimmy is in Bayview and has a question. What's up, Jimmy? You're on Warriors Wrap Up with Mark Randy. How you doing, Jimmy?
Hey, Mark. It's been a pretty much incredible trade season, and I think this is the first step in a 2-step process for them to go all in for Steph's final years. So, and then they're going to be way over, the cap. So I was adding up the salaries, and it looked like we had more going out than coming in. I wasn't aware of how far above the second apron we are. But if we get below the apron and add Butler, that would be, a pretty darn good showing, because, you got to be under for 2 of the 5 years. So we've already had this year, so we might as well use it as one of those years.
Yeah, Jimmy, really quick, Jimmy. I think the Warriors sent out about $1 million more than they brought in, so they are under the first apron now by $1.4 million. They are not allowed to go over that apron, so they have $1.4 million worth of spending money right now.
Right. Because I think they did a sign and trade, or I don't know, with all the new rules. But so that's great. That's pretty amazing. It sucks losing the pick, but I mean, if they're really going to go all in, because they're going to be over next year, so, you might as well just go all. And, I think they're hedging for another player maybe. And they're making room for Kuminga to see if he can play. So it's okay, here you go. I mean, Wiggins is vanilla ice cream, it's okay. And it might have been time for him to go. He was our best trade asset, and of course Miami wanted him, and probably our best defender. So good on them. But it'll be interesting. It'll definitely be a much better watch because they've been unwatchable. And let's see what happens.
Yeah, we
could get good Jimmy. Thanks.
I hear you, Jimmy. Good Jimmy, and that was a good Jimmy in Bayview. Appreciate the call, Jimmy. Yeah, I mean, I think Jimmy sums it up well there. I think I'm probably a little more in on this than a lot of you out there, and I see a lot of it on the text line and on our YouTube chat. And again, you can join the conversation, 888-957-9570, and on YouTube, youtube.com/957thegame. I'm seeing a lot of it, and I appreciate all you for chiming in, even if you disagree with me, and even if you're yelling at me, and even if you're calling me an idiot, and even if you're calling me stupid. I love you all the same. I think Jimmy summed it up well. It's going to be interesting to see how this plays out. Now, I'm going to give it a chance. Because, hey, one thing that I've been harping on for a long time now, and maybe this isn't the right mindset to have, and in fact, I got called out for it on the air by one of our hosts here when I was filling in last week. Got called out for it by Mark Willard. You listen to Willard and Dibs weekdays 2 to 6 here on 95.7 The Game. I was in for Dibs. It was Willard and I chopping it up all week last week. And he called me out saying, essentially, Grandy, you want to make a move just for the sake of making a move because you're bored. Because you're bored and you want the Warriors to do something and to excite you. Well, hell yeah. Hell yeah, this team has been boring me. They're a 500 basketball team that makes it a habit of blowing fourth quarter leads. And if they don't have a fourth quarter lead, they get blown out by 25 against average basketball teams. Hell yeah, they're boring, and hell yeah, I want to be excited. But the other half of this, not just that I had been bored at times watching this basketball team, but because they haven't been good. And you need to do something to get better. And I think by quite a margin, Jimmy Butler is a better basketball player than Andrew Wiggins. Now, again, you need those ifs to pay off, right? Those ifs that we talked about. Is Jimmy Butler bought in and focused on winning? And is Jimmy Butler healthy? You get those two things in your favor, you will be a much better basketball team. There is no doubt in my mind. But if those don't pay off, then you're probably going to be a worse basketball team because you gave up the guy who has arguably been your second best player so far this year. So there's risk. This is definitely not without risk. But the one thing I'm trying to get across, I think more than anything else, the Warriors didn't have any move available that does not have risk. No move here, even not making a move, does not come with no risk. Because if you don't make a move and you miss the playoffs, you might get to the offseason and Steph says, you haven't done enough to help me, to legitimately support me. I am asking for a trade. That is maybe the riskiest thing of all. That might be the riskiest thing of all. You had to do something. And I know this is risky. In fact, it's risky as hell because Jimmy Butler just, set ablaze to the Miami Heat locker room. And now you sign him to a 2-year contract extension worth $112 million. That is a risk. And I'm not saying it's without risk, but the Warriors did not have a move that does not include some major risk. They were dealt a pretty damn bad hand. And what do you do when you got a bad hand? You bluff the hell out of it. And the Warriors are doing their best to bluff out of this and see if they can get a win. And that's the challenge that they are running right now. We'll see if it works out. 888-957-9570. Back out to the phone lines. Alexander is in Chicago. What's up, Alexander? You're on Warriors Wrap-Up. How you doing?
How you doing, brother? I'm doing good, man. I'm ecstatic now. I'm extremely happy for the trade. Listen, I'm from Chicago, and this whole Zach LaVine stuff that Warriors fans were talking about is hilarious to me, man. Zach LaVine, he wasn't going to move the needle or get the job done. He never had the level of stardom on the level that Jimmy Butler has had. I remember when Jimmy Butler was here with the Bulls, and we dreaded him leaving because of, how hard of a worker he was and how he literally put Chicago on his back. And Chicago was like, it was it. Like, Chicago was like one of the best teams again now. So we should be thanking the basketball gods for not landing Zach LaVine in Golden State. Like, this move right here with Jimmy Butler landing in Golden State, this is the doing of the basketball gods. Now, I know that sounds hilarious, but literally, if you just look at the circumstances, there's no other way that we would have been in a position to land on Jimmy Butler without the circumstances being what they was. He wanted his way up out of Miami. Miami wasn't willing to pay him. And that's the situation with these players. We can't get mad at Jimmy Butler and try to throw shade on him and say, oh, well, he's showing his behind and he's a wreck everywhere he goes and he's a potty mouth and this, that, and the third. No, the man has led Miami to 2 championships. They didn't want to bring in a star in Damian Lillard. They wanted to prioritize the organization over him. So he bucked up against that. And he said, no, I want to get paid my value. And it's the same thing in the situation that happened in Golden State. Golden State want to bring Jimmy Butler here. Jimmy Butler is a big dog. He want big dog money, and he going to produce big dog results. Another thing I like about it, I don't mean to take up too much time, now you got 2 dogs on the team. You got a dog in Draymond Green, and you got a dog in Jimmy Butler. You got 2 hungry, competitive dogs that want to win. Now, everybody is afraid of that type of energy, but that's Chicago Bull energy. When you have Michael Jordan and Scottie Pippen and Dennis Rodman, all these crazy lunatics all on one team trying to figure out a way to win. And they figured it out and got the job done. So my whole thing, man, Warrior Nation, listen, stop pouting and be excited. Be grateful, man. We love Andrew Wiggins. He was fantastic for the Golden State Warriors. He was awesome. He was amazing. He shut Luka down and got us to the NBA Finals and showed up against the Boston Celtics. He did everything he needed to do for the Golden State Warrior organization, and I'm actually happy for him. He gets to go to Miami. Good for him.
Yeah.
And we get to move on as an organization with a winner in Jimmy Butler. Jimmy Butler, I know for a fact, come next week, come Monday, Jimmy Butler going to be suited up. He's going to be ready to put that work in, and he's going to be talking about winning games. So I'm excited now. I'm excited for the trade. And that's all I have to say, man. Thanks for having me on the show.
Yeah, appreciate it, Alexander. Great call, man. Great call. I think you're flat out 100% right. The Warriors got a couple of dogs. And hey, Alexander, you got some fans on our text line right now. The 415 has just spammed our text line in agreement with you, Alexander. The 415 writes, in all caps, we got Jimmy freaking Butler. I love Wiggins, but Jimmy, that dog, we all been waiting for Wiggins to become since being that number 1 overall pick. Yeah, 415, you're right. And Alexander, you're right. And again, this is not anti-Wiggs. Wiggins was an awesome Warrior. Won a championship with the Warriors. Was the number 2 reason why the Warriors won that championship. It was Steph and it was Wiggs. You got some from Clay. You got some from Jordan Poole. Draymond at times. Looney was amazing in that postseason run, but it was Steph and it was Wiggs. The 2 consistent leaders on the court in that postseason run. Wiggs, forever a Warrior legend. But Jimmy Butler is just at a different level. Jimmy Butler, as Alexander said, as the 415 has said, is a dog. And I'll tell you what. Again, first of all, the Warriors got to get there. They got to get there, and maybe they won't. This thing could go terribly wrong. There is a chance. Jimmy, comes in and plays a few games, and he pulls a hammy, and he misses a chunk of games, and Draymond re-aggravates his hamstring, and either Steph's shooting struggles continue, or maybe that knee tendonitis gets worse, and he has to sit out for a week or 10 days, and the Warriors lose a bunch of games and they miss the playoffs. And that is a reality. It's the risk you run when you are this old of a team. And I'm not saying there's no risk. Again, there's plenty of risk. But no matter what the Warriors did, there was a lot of risk. But what I will say is, and I'm going to use the word I've been using all night, and it is the operative word about this season and this move, if the Warriors go to the playoffs, and you have, at the time the playoffs start, a healthy Steph, a healthy Draymond, and a healthy Jimmy Butler, oh man, there is no team in the West that wants to play that. There are teams in the West that probably can beat that and very well likely should beat that and that should feel confident. But you're telling me that Oklahoma City, who has won 1 playoff series in their current iteration, is going to go into that series feeling like they got the Warriors? This is already a Warrior team that's beat Oklahoma City twice this year, by the way. And they beat them once without Draymond and without Jonathan Kuminga. And they almost beat him a 3rd time without Steph and without Draymond. And now you add Jimmy Butler to that? Oh, Oklahoma City would be freaking out by that. They would be freaking out about that. Now, for every one of, I think, the people who feel the way that I feel and that Alexander feels and that the 415 feels, I know there's a lot of you out there who disagree, and that's totally fine. But I'm just telling you, if you get the healthy, locked-in Jimmy Butler, you will immediately see this team play better. That's how I feel. That's how I feel. All right, let's go back out to the phone lines, 888-957-9570. Michael is in Oakland. Michael, what's up? You're on with Grandy on a Warriors Wrap-Up. How you doing, Michael?
I'm doing well. Thank you for taking the call.
Yeah, no problem, man. What do you think of the trade?
I think it's a good trade. The Warriors were looking for a second scorer, which is good. But then we always have to go back to what it was when we were 12-1. It was Kerr saying he was leaning defense. And the league, I think everyone thrives. If it's a team that thrives or a best team, you have to look at a defender, primary defender, and we gave up that in Wiggs. The other thing is also giving up another defender in Schröder. So we've given up two of our best defenders who can move laterally. And then you're looking at giving up the second ball handler. That is what we had in Melton. And that was when the team was taking and playing really well. So we've given up two defenders and we brought out, let's say, one defender who is a bit older. He's the second option, but the reason why I think the Denver Nuggets, all the other teams were good, is that the Denver Nuggets has two primary defenders in AG and Braun, and so the others can play. You have the point guard, Murray, who can play, and then others can play off the defense. Now we come back to the Warriors, and we are looking for two defensive players who can move, because Draymond will play the 4, and Jimmy will be, say, 3. But then Jimmy, say we play the Lakers, we need two defenders to be on LeBron and on Luka. And I don't think we have the second. So the Warriors need to go find a second defender who can move and who can be a point guard. Because in Wiggins, we had a player who was like McDaniels, primary wing defender, and also given 16 or 18 points. Maybe this season he's averaging 16 or 18, I don't know. But then we need a player who can produce on the defensive end to support Butler in the backcourt. And I think that's really, really important. That's all I have to say.
Yeah, appreciate the call, Michael. I mean, trading away Dennis Schröder, who was originally the replacement for D'Anthony Melton, means you don't have like that plug-and-play backup point guard. I think part of the reason why the Warriors were willing to do this deal, and I think it's twofold, is Jimmy Butler, of course, is not a point guard, and I think Michael's right. Butler will probably play the 3. I would imagine the Warriors starting 5 once Jimmy Butler is available and ready to play, and Warrior fans might not like this, but I would imagine Steve Kerr, when he has everybody maybe not named Kuminga available, Kuminga might still, and in fact probably will come off the bench, I would imagine the starting 5 is going to look like Steph Curry, Buddy Hield, Jimmy Butler, Draymond Green, and either Quentin Post or Kevon Looney, whichever way Steve Kerr wants to go. I think he might still go Quentin Post because Jimmy Butler is not a guy who gives you a ton of shooting, and you need that spacing from the 5. So I would imagine Quentin Post. And by the way, I would expect at some point tomorrow, if not overnight, maybe you wake up to it early tomorrow morning to get the news that Quentin Post has been converted from a 2-way deal to a fully guaranteed contract. The Warriors only have 11 fully guaranteed deals on their roster right now. They have to get back up to 12 by tomorrow, and then they have 2 weeks from tomorrow. You have until the 20th to get up to 14. I would imagine the first domino to fall is Quentin Post, converted from 2-way to fully guaranteed, and then they'll do some salary cap gymnastics to get the other 2 spots filled back up to 14 by the time the 20th comes around. So I would imagine that's what the lineup is going to look like. I don't think a lot of Warrior fans are too thrilled about Buddy Hield as the starting shooting guard, but you just got to hope his shot begins to come around again. And if you got that, along with the ball handling ability of Jimmy Butler, along with the scoring ability of Butler, along with the shooting ability of Steph, and the spacing of Hield and of Post, along with the defense and the passing of Draymond, like that's a unit that I think realistically could work. The 510, who's given me a little bit of grief. I love you, 510. Appreciate you for keeping me honest. Says, right, if you get the locked-in Butler, that's the main issue for me, and I'm sure others. 510, I'm not denying that you've got a legit fear there. All I will say is the reason why he was putting up such a stink and making such a stink in Miami was because the Heat refused to give him the contract extension that he wanted. The Warriors did. Jimmy Butler is signing a 2-year contract extension with the Warriors. He got the money that he wanted. He's going to come in here. I'm expecting him to come in here, be locked in and ready to contribute to winning. And you know who else who agrees with me, by the way, is Steph Curry. Here's Steph Curry post-game tonight. Let me read this quote to you. I know there was a lot of drama down there in Miami. Who really knows what the story is? We expect to have a motivated, committed Jimmy. That's what Steph Curry thinks about the situation. He also added that he sent Jimmy Butler a text message at halftime of this basketball game, and Butler responded back with a, quote, pleasant message back. Who knows exactly what that pleasant message was? Steph Curry did not reveal that, but he did again say that he expects a, quote, motivated, committed Jimmy. Now 5-0, and I think a lot of others might say, well, yeah, you could expect that from Jimmy, but he's burned bridges in the past. Yeah, he has. That's the risk you run. I'm just telling you, I feel pretty confident that he's going to be locked in and he's going to be committed. Now, who knows what 2 years from now looks like? But right now, I think it's very easy to see this being a Jimmy that is giving it his all every given night, because that's what's in his nature when other things around him are to his liking. And his contract is now to his liking. I don't know what the excuse is for him to not be that committed, locked in Jimmy. Okay, I know I'm late here going to this break, but let's take a quick break here on Warriors Wrap Up. Dan, I see you on hold. We're coming to you next. We got more to get to. It's Warriors Wrap Up, and extended Warriors Wrap Up because Jimmy Butler is a freaking Warrior. We'll talk more about that when we come back. It's Mark Randy with you. Warriors Wrap Up continues right here on 95.7 The Game.
Now back to Warriors Wrap Up on 95.7 The Game.
That was Mike Breen on ESPN calling Game 3 of the 2020 NBA Finals. If you remember, that was the bubble year. The team's playing down in Florida. It happened in October, one of the weirdest sights in NBA history. But Jimmy Butler, again, back then was amazing in that series. He had a 40-point triple-double in a Game 3 win for the Miami Heat. He scored 40 points, had 11 rebounds, had 13 assists. When you get Jimmy Butler at his best, there are few in the world that are better than him. Now, the big is Jimmy Butler going to be at his best as a Golden State Warrior? And that is, again, a very, very big if. I'll put it this way. As we welcome you back to Warriors Wrap Up, we'll hang out with you for another 25 minutes or so. So if you want to get your comments, your calls, your questions, your concerns, you want to yell at me, you want to do anything, give us a call, shoot us a text now, 888-957-9570. Dan, we're coming to you in a second. I'll put it this way. As the Warriors blow an 11-point lead in 3 minutes tonight in Utah against, frankly, a bad basketball team, I'll just say this. Jimmy Butler's on that Warrior team tonight. The Warriors win by double digits. Jimmy Butler would refuse to let the Warriors lose that basketball game. I 100% believe that. I'm not just saying that to try to back up what I've been arguing for all night here on Warriors Wrap Up. Jimmy Butler out on the floor for the Warriors tonight. No other changes. You still don't have Kuminga. You still don't have Moody. You don't have Trace Jackson-Davis. Guy Santos misses the second half. Jimmy Butler on the basketball floor in Salt Lake City tonight. The Warriors win by double digits. Jimmy Butler would refuse to let the Warriors blow that lead. And you could say, well, the Warriors might win tonight if Wiggins is on the floor. You might be right. But how many other times this year have the Warriors had a double-digit fourth-quarter lead that they lost that Wiggins was on the floor for? There is, I don't think you can possibly deny the difference in clutch time, in the big moments, who you can rely upon more, Wiggins or Butler. And I really hate that this has become the Wiggins versus Butler conversation because it's not fair. Wiggins has had an awesome Warriors tenure, and he will never be forgotten. And I'm going to play for you maybe his best moment as a Warrior coming up in a little bit. One of the most amazing things I've ever seen a player do on a basketball court was Andrew Wiggins as a member of the Warriors, and we'll get to that. Jimmy Butler is just on a different freaking level. A different level. The Warriors have blown so many late leads. Jimmy Butler is the type of player that would not let that happen. He dragged a Miami Heat roster multiple times to the NBA Finals. Twice. And I know we get caught up in rings culture, right? Well, how many rings does he have? He doesn't have any. He's not a champion. He's not a good player. How can you call him a postseason hero without a ring? Well, this goes back to the LeBron MJ debate. Like, oh, well, every time MJ went to the finals, he won. He's 6-0 in the finals. LeBron has how many? 6 finals losses or whatever it is. He's 4-6 in his career in the finals. He got to the finals 4 more times than MJ ever did. All that means is MJ lost before the finals more often than LeBron. Would you rather get to the finals or not get to the finals? Of course you'd rather get to the finals. And there is something to be said about going 6-0 versus losing more than you've won in the finals. But you can't tell me that just because MJ lost in the second round or in the Eastern Finals, that's better than LeBron losing in the finals. And it's a similar conversation here. Just because Jimmy Butler lost in the finals and doesn't have the ring, the ultimate prize, does not mean he's some sort of postseason scrub. We got to put some respect on his name. What he did 2 years ago in the playoffs, utterly ridiculous. Utterly ridiculous. Incredible. Jimmy Butler, again, I'm going to say it again. If you get the fully engaged and the fully healthy Jimmy, he is an elite two-way presence still. And you get scoring support for Steph. You get, another ball handler. You get some off-ball creation, and along with Draymond Green, you get an elite pairing on the defensive end. And let me read this off to you as well. And you can join the conversation, 888-957-9570. How about this as a scorer for Jimmy Butler? And this is on-ball scoring, and this is courtesy of Sport Radar. Todd Whitehead does a great job on all of these advanced metrics and stats. You can check him out on Twitter. I'm pulling this from something that he tweeted via Sport Radar again, Todd Whitehead on Twitter. On-ball scoring. This is leaders in most points scored per 100 on-ball scoring opportunities this season. Again, this is this season in what has been one of Jimmy Butler's worst in his career, in a season where, one, he hasn't played a lot, and two, when he has played, he has seemed relatively disinterested. Yet, Jimmy Butler leads the NBA in points scored per 100 on-ball scoring opportunities this year. What do I mean by on-ball scoring opportunities? As a ball handler on picks, ISOs, or post-ups. So you're running pick and roll when you are the ball handler there. When you're isolated with the ball in your hands, everyone clears aside for you to attack your defender one-on-one. And when you're posting up, Jimmy Butler gets the ball in the post one-on-one, those opportunities. Jimmy Butler is tied with Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, the front runner to be the MVP for the most points scored per 100 on-ball scoring opportunities this season. You add that to a Warriors offense that has at times, and not just at times, but very often looked lost both with and without Steph Curry on the floor. This offense is going to take on a different shape. And honestly, I'm really excited to see how Steve Kerr works Jimmy Butler into the mix, because this isn't like the prototypical Steph pairing. Again, the prototypical Steph pairing is an elite shooter who can also put the ball on the deck and can create a bit. Jimmy isn't the elite three-point shooter, but he is very good in the mid-range, and he can score off his own creation, and he can score at multiple levels, and he can also, I think, underrated as a passer. So how creative does Steve Kerr get, and how is he going to be able to make this work offensively? That's a big part of I think, this Warriors acquisition. Now the challenge is going to be on Steve Kerr to make this all work, and he has more to work with now than he has at any point earlier this season. There's no doubt in my mind. 888-957-9570. Let's go back out to the phone lines. Dan has been hanging out in Michigan. What's up, Dan? You're on Warriors Wrap-Up with Mark Randy on 95.7 The Game. How you doing, Dan?
What's up, Mark, man? I'm calling from Michigan, and I got to be honest, I'm sick. I feel like this move was just to make the fans happy, just to get us by for this season, because they knew we would go crazy if nothing happened. We're giving Jimmy Butler credit for what he did in the finals 2 times. One of the times was in the bubble. If we're giving people credit for what they did in the bubble, and we're giving him $60.5 million for what he did in the bubble, TJ Warren deserves $30 million for what he did in the bubble too, then, if that's the case.
Wow, come on. TJ Warren didn't drag his team to the finals. I know what you're going for here, but that's different.
Okay. So he dragged him to the finals the second time. He goes 4-1. He scores, 14 points the first game. And Jokic kills him pretty much the whole entire series. And he's coming on the West Coast. So I don't know what the offense is going to look like. I imagine Steph, Jimmy at the 2, Kuminga at the 3, Dre at the 4, and Quentin Post at the 5. But we know Kerr will not run that. But I don't know, man. I'm sick. I don't know how Jimmy Butler plays into the future. I hear he's taking Tim Hardaway's number. It just sounds like a bunch of drama already happening.
Appreciate the call, Dan. And I think there's a lot of Warrior fans that feel the same way. And yeah, he is taking number 10. Jimmy Butler wearing number 10 reportedly. Other Warriors to wear number 10 includes, as Dan just said, Tim Hardaway, who wore it from 91 to 96. Also, this surprised me, Mike Dunleavy wore number 10 for just 1 year. I think he was, 34 for the most of his Warrior career, but he wore number 10 in 2003. Other notable Warriors to wear number 10, David Lee. David Lee wore number 10. You want to go more recent? Jacob Evans wore number 10. Dragan Bender for 1 year wore number 10. Brad Wanamaker wore number 10. Ty Jerome wore number 10. Not Bol's dad, Manute Bol, also wore number 10 going back to the 80s and early 90s. So aside from Tim Hardaway and David Lee, not a super popular Warriors number among like really good players. But yeah, Tim Hardaway's number 10 is now going to be worn by Jimmy Butler. Jimmy in the past had wore number 21, 23, most recently 22 in Miami. But yeah, he's going to be wearing number 10 with the Warriors, which again is Tim Hardaway's number. But I hear you, Dan. I do. I think we tend to just I think we get lost in, well, it's been 2 years since he went to the finals. What has he done for me lately? And that's fair, and he's 35 years old, and the odds of him staying healthy over the course of a whole season, yeah, no doubt, not great, but the same can be said for Steph and Draymond, and the Warriors doubled down on age, and Dan asking about the future. This is not a future play, there's no doubt. This is a play for now for Steph Curry. And maybe the Warriors, part of the reason why they made the move was the pressure from the fan base. I mean, Bob Myers is on this very station last week and essentially said, as a general manager at the deadline, it's hard to not react to the pressure the fan base is putting on you. There's no doubt about that. I think this is more about Steph and more about trying to win now than about what the fan base wants. Because honestly, if I'm doing my straw poll from where I sit and I'm keeping an eye on our chat, both on YouTube and on our text line and our callers, I think there's more Warrior fans who are out on the move than for the move. So I don't know how you could argue that this was the fan base's doing or the pressure from the fan base. I think there's a lot out there. I feel like the Warriors gave up way too much to sign a 35-year-old to a 2-year contract extension worth a little more than like $55 million per year on average. And I get that. But this was a move to support Stephen Curry. And honestly, the bottom line for me, you could fast forward 3 years in the future, 4 years in the future, 5 years in the future, and you could look back on this as a catastrophic mistake. But I'm going to say at that point, well, hindsight's 20/20 in the moment. The Warriors were doing what they thought was best for Steph. And what you think is best for Steph is what's best for this team as well. So that is my bottom line right now, and I am not terribly fearful the Warriors gave up so much that their future is drastically changed, because this is a Warrior team that, again, without Steph in the future, even if you had Wiggins and even if you had your first-round pick this year or next, you are probably going to be pretty darn bad the first few years post-Steph anyway. So how much are you really, saying goodbye to? What are you really trading away? What is the opportunity cost of what you're giving up? The opportunity cost is maybe you luck into a great pick at number 16 overall, and that's your next franchise centerpiece. Okay, but how realistic is that? I'd argue not realistic at all. And the Warriors, by the way, they probably would not have done this deal if they felt like they loved somebody that might get to them in the mid-teens. There's been a report they do not feel that way. That is likely where their pick is going to be. So what's the harm in not having that pick? Of course, you'd rather have it, but is it worth not getting the upgrade that is Jimmy Butler over Andrew Wiggins? I think it is absolutely worth that risk. Okay, 888-957-9570. Fozzie is in the East Bay, and now he joins the conversation on Warriors Wrap-Up. What's up, Fozzie?
Yeah, thanks for having me on, Grandy.
Yeah, no problem, man. What do you think of the trade?
Oh man, you know what? I was listening all day today, thinking that we're gonna get KD, and I would have been okay with that. I was prepared for whatever that might have come with. But this, to me, now that I've had a few hours to look at it, is probably the best trade out there possible for us. We get what I think is going to be a happy Jimmy Butler because he gets his contract extension, but we're also retaining a lot of our young guys. I was thinking that we were for sure going to have to give up not only Wiggins, but a JK or Pods or somebody like that. But we keep all those young guys. We get what's what I hope to be the best version of Jimmy Butler that we're going to get to see. And you know what? All of the Warriors need in my eyes now is a chance. If they get into the dance and we get to see playoff Jimmy Butler and playoff Steph Curry play together, I think that's going to be some primetime show. So, yeah, I've been listening all day. Man, you guys have been doing a great job. Shout out to my guy Cam on the boards. Do your thing, man. Cheers, boys.
Yes, sir. Appreciate it, Fozzie. Yeah, we love Cam here. Cam doing his job behind the glass, doing a great job as always. Fozzie, you brought up something that I wanted to bring up, and it's a really good point. I know I've been touching on this earlier, but I wanted to add one more piece of this to the conversation. Fozzie talking about how he thinks we're going to get a happy Jimmy Butler because he has the contract extension now. I think that is the logical conclusion to draw. That's why he was causing such a scene in Miami. He did not get the contract extension that he wanted. He has it now. Everything should be hunky-dory with Jimmy. Steph Curry feels that way. I know I shared with you one thing that Steph said. He said, quote, "We expect to have a motivated, committed Jimmy." He added more on top of that. Steph Curry was asked if the Warriors feel like they can integrate Jimmy Butler drama-free. And Steph Curry said, quote, "Him signing an extension is big, knowing he's committed for this next little run." Steph Curry and the Warriors feel that way. And of course, if they didn't feel that way, they would not make the deal. Making the deal and signing him to the extension is the Warriors telling you that they feel like Jimmy's locked in. Jimmy's committed. Jimmy is ready to help this team win basketball games. If they did not feel that way and they made this deal, yikes. I guarantee you the Warriors do not feel that way. It's still a risk, but they feel that way right now. And I'm sure they have had some pretty extensive conversations with Jimmy Butler about that. And again, I know there was the report on Sunday evening that Jimmy Butler did not want to sign an extension here. So what changed? My guess is a combination of things. One, it became more realistic that the Phoenix Suns deal was not going to happen for whatever reason. Hint, hint, Bradley Beal's no trade clause not being waived. And two, because the Warriors probably offered him a little bit more money than they previously were willing to do. Those two factors combined, enough for Jimmy to say, yes, I'm happy being there for the next 2.5 years alongside Steph, alongside Dre. Let's get to work and let's win some basketball games. That is how I think this conversation went, and it's a big reason why the Warriors feel confident enough to get this deal done. Because no doubt, there's a risk. There's big risk here, but it's a calculated risk, and the Warriors are calculating that they're going to get a happy and a good and a locked-in Jimmy Butler. We'll see. Only time will tell. 888-957-9570. We got more calls to get to. I know I said we only had a few more minutes left with you, but you guys are stacking the phone line, so we're going to keep going as long as you guys got calls. You're keeping my guy Cam behind the glass busy, so we're going to keep going here on Warriors Wrap-Up on 95.7 The Game. Up next is Ryan in San Leandro. What's up, Ryan? You're on Warriors Wrap-Up. How you doing?
Doing well. How about yourself?
I'm doing good. I'm excited about this Jimmy Butler trade, Ryan. I don't know if it's going to make the Warriors a legit contender in the West, but hey, it's exciting at least.
Yeah. I think it's, I agree with the last caller. It's exciting. It's not Kevin Durant. We couldn't make that happen, but I feel like we would have to give a lot. They were talking about Draymond Green, draft capital, Andrew Wiggins, probably even Kuminga, but I really feel like Jimmy Butler can really help Kuminga grow. Kuminga has been working on a lot of ISO and, working off the block and trying to work on his handling and stuff. And so, we tried to create a lot of ISO plays for Kuminga. And Jimmy Butler's, like you said, the stat earlier, he's the guy that is able to do that. And so I feel like if you can mentor Kuminga a little bit in these next 2.5 years or so, like Kuminga can really grow. And I don't think we're contenders, but we can at least make it off, pretty far in the playoffs. I appreciate it.
Yeah, I hear you, Ryan, and good call. The mentoring JK is an interesting one as well. Kuminga, Jimmy Butler, I'm not so sure they're terribly similar players, but just having that kind of guy who has been, and I know he hasn't always gotten along, and I say that kind of tongue-in-cheek. He's very rarely gotten along with all of his teammates over the course of multiple years, but there's no doubt there's lots to learn from a guy like Jimmy Butler. I don't think there's any denying that. And maybe Jonathan Kuminga can learn a thing or two from him. I think that's a good point. Let's sneak in one more call before we take another break, and then we will come back, and we got another segment with you coming up on the other side. But first, it's M Squared in Oakland. What's up, M Squared? You're on Warriors Wrap-Up. How you doing?
Hey, Randy. What's happening, man? Thanks for having me.
Yeah, no problem. What do you think of the trade, man?
Well, at first I was a little sad because, let's face it, Andrew Wiggins eats for free in the Bay Area. He was a big part of our championship team, and he's been a great guy for us. Outside of the year and a half or so where he was, losing his father, you can't go wrong with Wiggins. But after thinking about this for a little bit, you got to look at this really from an overall perspective. If in 2 years Steph and Dre are gone, or let's say they're bench players, whatever you want to call it, the ride's over in 2 years. The Warriors aren't building around Wiggins at that point. So you got to trade somebody to get somebody. And they gave up Wiggins now because they're not winning with him right now. And I hate to say that because I think he's having a fantastic year. I think he's going to be a hell of a player for Miami. But we're not winning right now with Wiggins. So you got to do something different, and you take a little bit of a risk. You also look at the fact that the Warriors have been in on several big players going back to last summer. Paul George, Lauri Markkanen, most recently Kevin Durant. They would have emptied the cupboard for all three of those guys, and we would have been the Phoenix Suns, locked in the second apron, no way to aggregate players for a trade, no draft picks in the future because we gave them all up. The Warriors have all that. They're still in an okay financial situation at this moment. They've got all their young players. They've given up this year's draft pick, which wasn't going to help them anyway. It wasn't going to get them over the top. And now it boils down to this. The Warriors need not just Jimmy to come in motivated, because he will. And you look at his history, Philadelphia, Minnesota, Miami, everywhere he lands, he comes in like a jolt of coffee in the morning, and he gives everybody a big boost. And he's going to do that for the Warriors. But now what the Warriors need to bank on is a couple things. It's up to how does Pods, JK, and to a lesser degree guys like Moody and Post develop and become solid rotation players? And then additionally, what does Dunleavy do over the summer? Can he pull another Melton out of the hat? Can he find some guys like that and sign them to minimum deals and bring them in? Because that's ultimately what we've got for the next 2 years. And he's still got flexibility, can still make some moves, and that's it. And if it doesn't work out, guess what? In 2 years, we're rebuilding anyway. So keeping Wiggins wasn't going to help us. You get my drift?
I do, M Squared. I think you hit on a number of really, really key points. The last one may be the biggest of them all. You're rebuilding in 2 or 3 years, no matter what. If Wiggins is on the roster and if Wiggins is not. And by the way, Wiggins' contract is up when Jimmy Butler's contract is up. I'm pretty confident that over the next 2.5 years, you're going to get more out of Jimmy Butler than you would have out of Andrew Wiggins. And nothing against Slow-Mo, nothing against Schröder, who was going to be a free agent after this year anyway, nothing against Lindy Waters, and nothing against whoever Miami picks with the pick that they get from the Golden State Warriors. Whatever those 4 pieces combined give you plus Wiggins, I don't think it's going to be more than what Jimmy Butler is going to give you over the next 2.5 years. I might be wrong, but that's how I feel. And oh, by the way, this Jimmy Butler acquisition does not mean anything about the Warriors' ability to sign Jonathan Kuminga to an extension this offseason either. I'll tell you why when we come back on the other side. Okay, one final break and then one final segment. A couple more of your calls. We're going to hear from Steve Kerr. We're going to pay tribute to Andrew Wiggins as well. All that is coming up when we return. It's Warriors Wrap-Up, an extended version with Mark Randy with you here on 95.7 The Game.
Now back to Warriors Wrap Up on 95.7 The Game.
Welcome back. Warriors fall in Utah tonight, but that is kind of secondary to everything else they did today. It's unfortunate. It really is that the Warriors had such another terrible loss. It felt like we were drifting towards, well, nice win on the road. Let's talk about Jimmy territory. Then the Warriors had to go and blow an 11-point lead in the final 3 minutes. We spent like the first 30 minutes talking about that. The rest of the show has been about Jimmy Butler and the gigantic news that the Warriors have traded for Jimmy Butler from the Miami Heat, sending out Andrew Wiggins, Dennis Schröder, Kyle Anderson, Lindy Waters, and a protected first-round pick. The protections on the pick, top 10 this year, top 10 next year. If neither of those convey, unprotected in 2027 for the Miami Heat. I would imagine it's going to convey either this year or next, likely this year. If I were to bet with Jimmy Butler in tow and a fresh 2-year contract extension given to him, the Warriors will not be picking in the top 10 of this year's draft, meaning if that does happen, this year's first-round draft pick will be headed to the Miami Heat, and I believe that is what the Warriors think is going to happen. If it doesn't happen and they do have a top 10 pick, the Warriors will get to make that pick this year. Same exact story for next year as well. All right, Warriors wrap up here on 95.7 The Game, 888-957-9570. Back to the phones in a second, but I did want to make sure I said this as I tease it going into our last break. I know there's been a lot of concern about, well, if you acquire Jimmy Butler and if you sign him to an extension, as the Warriors have done, what does that mean for the future of Jonathan Kuminga? Because I think of all the Warriors' young assets, Kuminga is the most real. He's the most valuable of the assets, and I would agree. Does acquiring Jimmy Butler hurt the Warriors' chances or make it difficult for them to sign Kuminga to an extension this offseason? Because he's going to be a restricted free agent, meaning that he can hit the open market. And if he gets an offer from some other team, and really there's only a couple of teams that can offer him, one of them is the Brooklyn Nets. If he gets an offer from any other team, the Warriors have the right to match it. And if they match it, Jonathan Kuminga has to accept that offer, and he becomes a Golden State Warrior. So they have all the power to do that. But does this acquisition and the extension for Jimmy, 2 years, 112, more than 55 average annual value per year over the next 2 years, does that hinder the Warriors' ability to offer Kuminga a fair contract this offseason? No, it does not. No, it does not, because the Golden State Warriors right now, they have Jonathan Kuminga under their own control, and they can go out and sign their own players to any amount of money that they want. It would put the Warriors over the first apron. It would put the Warriors over the second apron, I would imagine, but they have every right to do that. Now, maybe they get to a point where they don't want Kuminga at X amount of money, and the Nets do, and they say bye to him. But the Warriors, if they want Kuminga around long term, there is no reason they cannot sign him. So that is a big plus in this conversation as well. All right, 888-957-9570. We got to hear from Kerr still. We got to celebrate Andrew Wiggins as he leaves the Golden State Warriors. But we got more calls to get to. So many of you want to talk, and I'm so appreciative. Thanks so much for tuning in and for joining the conversation here on Warriors Wrap Up. Up next is Miles in Fort Mason. Miles, what's up? You're on Warriors Wrap Up. How you doing, Miles?
Hey, Brandy, it's great to talk with you tonight. And of course, there's so much to unpack. Let's start with the short term. Do I think that Jimmy gives us our best chance to win a playoff series, perhaps multiple playoff series? Yes. The Warriors did not have a lot of great options, not a lot of great players on the trade block. So they had to do the best they could. I'm supportive of the trade. Wiggins, Schröder, Slow-Mo, Lindy Waters, hey, we all love you guys. Wiggins had by far the most equity with the organization. And we love him, but it's the sacrifices that you make when you get a player like Jimmy Butler. Now, I've been on group chats all night, as I'm sure you have, about people that are critical of the trade. And, you know, my quote is, do not let the perfect be the enemy of the good, you know, or the a lot better. You know, the Warriors, what are we holding on to? Being 500 right now? You know, a season last year that was mired in mediocrity. And, you know, even before that, you know, the season after we won the title, it wasn't great. So, you know, and, you know, the discussion about Kuminga's future, is he a number one? Is he a person that we want to, you know, max out and have to start considering, you know, to be Jimmy's contract is, you know, in his way? And I think from Kuminga's sake.
Oh, Miles, you there? Sorry, Miles. I think we lost you. Sorry about that. You're making a lot of good points. Yeah, I mean, you ask a lot of Warrior fans if is Kuminga a future one. I think most would say no. Now, Kuminga is a positive piece, no doubt, and I think the Warriors would be foolish to let him leave for nothing. So I think that means you should extend him this offseason. And by the way, I said that, you know, signing him to an extension probably puts them over the first apron and maybe over the second apron. That's possible, but I also forgot that there's still Warriors on the roster currently that are expiring contracts. You have an $8 million expiring Looney contract coming off the books, and you have Gary Payton II's $9.13 million coming off of the books. And then you have Jonathan Kuminga's $7.6 coming off of the books before you add back what, you know, he's going to sign for. So that's 9 and 8 and 7.5. That math in my head is what, 17, $24.5 million right there for Jonathan Kuminga. I mean, if you sign him for $25 million a year, you are still under the first apron at that point. Now you're going to have to do some other, again, salary cap gymnastics to fill out the rest of your roster, but there's a way to sign Kuminga to a reasonable contract and keep Jimmy Butler and keep Steph Curry and keep Draymond and still have Buddy Hield, although a lot of Warrior fans might not feel great about that, and still have Moody and still have Podziemski and still have Trace Jackson-Davis. And there's still a very, very real way the Warriors can still do all of that at this point. 888-957-9570. We're going to go back out to the phone lines in just 1 second. Christian, I see you. We're coming to you in a sec, but I've waited long enough. We got to hear from Coach Kerr, and then, Christian, I'll go out to the phone lines. Here's Coach Kerr post-game tonight addressing his team's loss in Utah. Again, as we think back to what happened in Salt Lake City earlier today, the Warriors blew an 11-point lead in the final 3 minutes, but the Warriors also acquired Jimmy Butler. Here's Coach Kerr post-game earlier tonight.
Steve, how hard was the pregame meeting with the players?
I don't think am I allowed to talk about this or
no? Not about the trade. He can't acknowledge it. It hasn't happened yet.
I mean, different mood to this game, I guess we can say. You only had 10 players, I guess, or 9, or however many. Did it feel different?
Yeah, it always feels different. I think the league should consider making the trade deadline, you know, at the All-Star break, you know, just so you don't have to face these games where guys are getting traded half an hour before and a game, and, you know, you're trying to process the emotions and trying to win a game. I don't know if it's possible, but it'd be great if we could move it back to, or you know, make the last couple of days, you know, before the deadline, like off day. I don't know how to do it, but these are tough days for sure.
I know you can't talk about like the specifics of the trade, but clearly you were having some conversations with guys pre-game. I mean, I guess why did you choose to be the one that seemed to go around and, I guess, break?
Can I talk about this? Or?
That'd probably be fine. Yeah, that's fine. You can talk about that.
I'm the coach. I mean, you know, so stuff like this happens. That's my job. So, yeah.
And, I what did you see within the emotions of your team?
Well, we got off to a terrible start, but, bounced back. And I thought played a pretty solid game until the last 3 minutes. You look at the stats, and it's yet another NBA game that makes no sense to me. We have 33 assists and 9 turnovers, and we make 17 threes. And we lose to a team that's, 12 and 37. They scored 20 points in the last 3 minutes. And so this game has gotten so crazy. Everybody is capable of putting up 20 points in 3 minutes if it comes to it. And so, overall, we played a pretty solid game. We weren't great, but we took care of the ball for the most part, and had control of the game, 10-point lead in the final minutes, and lost. So it's a tough one, another tough one. There have been a lot of these this year, and brutal loss. But we got to move on. We got another game tomorrow night, and we got to process everything that happened today and move forward.
All right, there's Steve Kerr post-game earlier tonight in Salt Lake City after the Warriors fell to the Jazz. Final score, 131-128. The Jazz closed on a 20-6 run over the final 3 minutes. They erased an 11-point deficit, and they win by 3. Just Utah's 12th win of the season, and this is up there for one of the Warriors' worst losses of the season, and there is a bunch of them to choose from. I'll say this as I bring it back to Jimmy Butler. The Warriors do not lose this game if Jimmy Butler is on the floor. He would not let the Warriors blow that lead in the final 3 minutes. They would get a couple more points. They would get another stop or two, and they'd win that basketball game. And we will see the impact that Jimmy Butler has on the Warriors. He has been acquired by the Golden State Warriors. In return, the Warriors sending away Andrew Wiggins along with Dennis Schröder, Kyle Anderson, Lindy Waters, and a protected first-round pick. I'm seeing some comments on both our text line and our YouTube chat saying, dang, Steve sounds depressed. He seems pissed. He's not happy about this trade. I don't know about that. I think that's Steve Kerr, who loves the guys on a personal level that they traded away, and that is very difficult to deal with. Andrew Wiggins, from everything that we can gather, from everything that I've witnessed at Chase Center, Andrew Wiggins is beloved in that locker room. Dennis Schröder, obviously, Warriors didn't know him very well. Same with Kyle Anderson, although Steve Kerr has only spoken glowingly about him. Lindy Waters, the same way. These are just people who everybody in that locker room loved a lot, and it's painful to say goodbye to that. I don't think we can jump to the conclusion that Steve Kerr automatically thinks the trade was a terrible idea. I think he'd be foolish to think that because I think the team got better today. But it's difficult to say goodbye to people you really care about, and that's what the Warriors are having to do. So again, I think there's a little bit of a leap going on there that is not accurate. Only time will tell how the trade affects the Warriors basketball team, but how it affects Steve Kerr and the Warriors' emotions on a personal level, yeah, it hurts. It hurts. Andrew Wiggins, beloved. Lindy Waters, an awesome story. Kyle Anderson, one of the best dudes, one of the best people in the NBA. And Dennis Schröder, we hardly knew you, but I don't think a lot of people in that locker room had problems with him either. That's hard to do. And we can focus on Andrew Wiggins for a second, because as one of our callers, I apologize, I forget exactly which one it was. One of our callers said Andrew Wiggins of that group has by far the most equity built up in this organization and in this fan base. And there's no doubt. And when I think of Andrew Wiggins and I think of his time as a Golden State Warrior, the first word that comes to mind for me is champ. Andrew Wiggins, a champion. The Warriors do not win in 2012 without him. He was amazing in that 2022, or I said 2012, the 2022 postseason. They do not win in 2022 without him. And there's one particular moment that stands out above the rest. He had a lot of good moments as a Warrior. There is one better than everything else, and it was this moment. Game 3, 2022 Western Conference Finals. Warriors up 2-0. They're up by a slim margin in the fourth quarter. And he does this to Luka Doncic in Dallas.
Curry will bring it across. Takes it the logo, goes left on Brunson. Driving in, skipped it over to Wiggins. Wiggins puts it on the deck. He'll drive the glass, goes up for the jam. Oh, my goodness. Oh, they're going to call it an offensive foul on Wiggins. Not a team foul. Steve Kerr's going to call a timeout.
You going to challenge it?
He may challenge that.
Andrew Wiggins with that poster dunk over Luka Doncic in Game 3 of the 2022 Western Conference Finals to help lead the Warriors to a win, to take a 3-0 lead, to eventually win that series, go on to the finals, and to beat the Boston Celtics. Andrew Wiggins, champ. And by the way, I will never forgive that official for calling that an offensive foul because he ruined an all-time call by Tim Roy. He run 95-7 the game. Andrew Wiggins, Warrior, champ. And that was one of his best moments. Andrew, it sucks to see you go, but you are one hell of a Warrior basketball player. And Warrior basketball is better because you were a Warrior. There's no doubt about that. All right, back out to the phones. A few minutes left with you here on Warriors Wrap-Up. Let's go to Christian, who's been waiting patiently in Fairfield. Christian, what's up? You're our last caller of the night. Take us home, Christian. How you doing?
I'm good. You almost made me cry there.
Wiggins means a lot to this franchise, no doubt.
Yes. And we can share the same birthday, February 23rd.
Hey, there you go. Happy early birthday, Christian.
Thank you. Jimmy Butler's adding a dimension Steph Curry's never played with. If you listen to what Steph Curry said, he's excited. You couldn't hear it in the tone because he can't do that right now. But he said he texted him. He said they're going to run a different offense. Veer from the motion. It's going to look a little different. They're going to take sets from Miami. Look at that. That's going to open up the game for all the young players. Remember TJD with the pick and roll, Chris Paul? What'd you just say that Jimmy Butler does? He's top with SGA when he has the ball in the hand.
Yep.
So that's going to open up the game for all the young players. When Kuminga becomes a screener, it's going to be a lot. We're going to see a little more of a high-flying Warriors because they're going to use the talent and the athleticism of the young players. So this is a great trade. I think we're going to get a championship within these 2 years after this. No matter who they add, if it's sign Kuminga or they use that money to go get another good player, this is something that the Hope Warriors fans are excited.
Appreciate the call, Christian. I think you might be the most confident of any Warrior fan that I've heard. You're going to get a championship in the next couple of years. That is certainly the hope. One thing I will say is this move, it is a move to try to do that. It is at the very least a move to get Steph Curry a shot, to give him an at-bat, and that's what they talked about. What the Warriors want above anything else is to give Steph an at-bat. Get him to the playoffs and see what happens then. The last 2 months made it pretty clear the Warriors, as currently constructed, do not have enough to get Steph into the playoffs and to give him that shot. They also said they don't want to do that at the expense of mortgaging their future. They found a middle ground here. They found an opportunity to help Steph get to the playoffs and give him that at-bat one more time, 2 more times, maybe 3 more times. But they also did it without mortgaging the future. I know it's difficult to say goodbye to Wiggins, and I know the promise of what the first-round pick might be is, you always think it's going to be, the next Kawhi Leonard who was picked in the middle of the first round, right? We picked Draymond in the second round. We picked Clay 11th overall. Like, what if we get one of those guys? Yeah, what if? What if? It's possible. It's unlikely. It is not likely. I get the promise of it, but the Warriors did not mortgage their future. Mortgaging the future is like giving up Kuminga and 2 or 3 first-round picks. The Warriors held on to their most precious young asset, and they only traded away 1 first-round pick, and they got, yes, a 35-year-old, but a hell of a basketball player. One hell of a basketball player, and for that reason, I'm in. I'm in on this move by the Golden State Warriors. I would imagine Jimmy Butler not available tomorrow in LA when the Lakers are hosting the Warriors. By the way, Luka Doncic also will not play for the Lakers in that game. I would imagine no Luka. I would imagine no Jimmy Butler. But I think there's a good chance the Warriors will see a Jimmy Butler debut Saturday in Chicago against the Bulls. How fitting would that be, where Jimmy began his NBA career? That would be my guess when we see Jimmy Butler make his Warrior debut Saturday in Chicago. Don't have definitive word, but I would imagine we do not see Jimmy in LA tomorrow. I could be wrong, but I would expect Saturday in Chicago to be when we see Jimmy make his debut as a Warrior. Okay, last thing to take care of before we get on out of here for the night It is Crashing the Boards, brought to you by Chilton Auto Body, the Bay Area leader in collision repair. Crashing the boards tonight for the Golden State Warriors. It was Kevon Looney off the bench. He's done this very often for the Warriors this year. The only dub in double figures on the glass, 23 minutes for Looney, 10 rebounds in this basketball game. Looney, solid for a while now for the Warriors, having himself a really good stretch of play. He was good again tonight, 10 rebounds for Kevon Looney. He gets the honor of crashing the boards, which again is brought to you by Chilton Auto Body, the Bay Area leader in collision repair. Our thanks, as always, to Chilton for this segment. Kevon Looney, good job to Kevon, although the Warriors did fall on this one, 131-128. The Dubs back to 500 at 25-25. Believe it or not, the Warriors have now been, ever since they were 18-16, they've been 18-18, 19-19, 20-20, 21-21, 22-22, 23-23, 24-24, and now 25-25. We'll see if the addition of Jimmy Butler is enough to push them more than just a single game above 500 at any given point. Maybe they get on a little bit of a streak, and Jimmy Butler is what the Warriors needed to turn this season around and to sneak into the postseason. Because as of right now, as we take a quick glance at the standings before we say goodnight, the Warriors are out of the play-in picture. They are 25-25, tied with the Kings and the Suns. Both those teams have the tiebreaker over the Warriors. So the Warriors on the outside of the play-in looking in. But if you want some positive news, the Warriors are only, 3 games behind the Clippers for the 6. They're only 5 games behind the Lakers for the 5 and 6.5 games behind the Nuggets for the 4 seed. And then you go to Houston as well, 7 games behind the Rockets for the 3 seed. That is, of course, a long way to jump. But there's a very real way the Warriors can jump not only into the play-in, but potentially out of the play-in up to the 6th seed if they have a really solid final 32 games. 25-25. Can they go 20-12 to get to 45 wins? We'll see. We'll see if the Warriors can get that done. All right, that'll do it for us tonight. We got a full day tomorrow of reaction to this game, but also the Jimmy Butler trade. It all begins with our all-new morning roast featuring a couple of Joes, Joe Spadoni and Joe Shasky, 6 to 10 in the morning. Steiny and Goo from 10 to 2. Willard and Dibbs from 2 to 6. And then we got Warriors basketball again tomorrow in L.A. I'll have you covered again, pregame and postgame, Warriors Live and Warriors Wrap-Up. Coverage begins at 6, and tip-off is at 7 right here on 95.7 The Game. Okay, that'll do it. A long Warriors Wrap-Up, but it was a fun one. Although the Warriors did lose, it was great to have these conversations with all of you. Thanks so much for tuning in. Thanks as well to Cam behind the glass, as well to Chris O'Connell, who I think driving back home right now. Shout out, Chris. Appreciate all your hard work as always. My name is Mark Randy signing off. We'll talk tomorrow. Dubs lose, but Jimmy Butler is on his way to the Bay. We'll talk a lot more about this tomorrow right here on 95.7 The Game.